This is a really nice kit, actually. It goes together really easily, and I like kits that reward the builder. Hi there everyone, I hope I find you well. Welcome back up here to the loft with Weir Yard. Today's video comes to you in association with our sponsor, Rails of Sheffield, and in particular their Wanted service. This is a service that allows you to trade in unwanted items of locomotives and rolling stock and get the best possible price for them, either for cash or for store credit to put towards something that you really want. It couldn't be simpler. Follow the links down below, and when you do, tell them that Kirk sent you, and you'll get a 10% uplift on your agreed valuation right through until the end of June 2020. So hurry and take advantage today. The channel is also sponsored by Train-O-Matic, makers and designers of the best DCC decoders on the market. Take a look at their website today at the links down below. And today we've got something a little bit different. Now this is a product that was kindly sent over by Pico, and you might remember that we did the laser cut wood kit of the Highland Railway signal box. I was very impressed with that. So much so that I found a permanent home for it up here on Weir Yard. I'm really pleased with the results. So I thought that you guys might appreciate, as part of this review, we're going to do a full building of this particular kit. And this is what they've sent over. It's the Wartime ARP, that stands for Air Raid Protected Flat Roof Signal Box Ratio Kit, reference 554. So if you want to go and find this, we've got a link down below, and that'll take you to where you can find your own version of this kit. Now, ARP, Air Raid Protected, what that essentially means is that these were a product of the Second World War, designed so that they could build a signal box that gave some level of protection from the blast, from bombing raids, so that they wouldn't take a direct hit, but certainly a hit close by wouldn't put them out of action in the same way that perhaps a conventional signal box might have been, so that essentially the railways could keep on running, and that was very important. So come with me. This is the kit, Wartime ARP Flat Roof Signal Box. As you can see there, ratio kit number 554. And on the box we can see a picture of it all built up and ready to plant. Of course it does need paint for final finishing. So I'm going to open this up and see just what we've got. I'm going to keep the clear plastic box because we're going to make the window material out of this, and hopefully there's going to be plenty to be able to do what we want. But let's take a look as well. We're going to keep this as well for some reference material, just so we know what we're building up to. Let's take a look at the rest here. So we've got fairly comprehensive instructions with exploded diagrams. I do like these. It just helps an awful lot to visualize how the different parts go together. It actually seems to be a pretty simple kit. I'm just looking there. Yeah, there's not a huge number of parts, but hopefully this will build up into a really nice representation. And looking at the parts here on the sprue, they're pretty crisp. I'm not seeing any flashing at all to mess up any of the edges. Good clean edges, and that's great for putting this together. Hopefully it means we're not going to need any fettling on this. The window pieces, they're all moulded as part of the kit, so we don't even need to put them in. What we will do is put some glazing material on the back, and actually I'll do that before we build the main bulk up, just so that we've got them in place and we don't have to then try and fit small pieces in down into the model once we've built it up. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let's have a look what's the rest of the paperwork that we've got here. Just instructions and painting hints. This comes with all of the models and just gives you some fairly generic list of, I think this is the same piece of paperwork that goes in all the kits, so some of these might not actually apply, but there's some good solid advice here on doing things like painting techniques, weathering techniques, and just different types of glues, fillers. I don't think we're going to need fillers on this. And certainly some tips to be able to get the best out of paint work on various bits and pieces. So good clear instructions. Sharp modelling knife, I guess, is going to be our first port of call, and what I want to do is just separate some of these parts out. So I've got a piece of wood. It's my trusty piece of scrap wood, and the only reason for this is just so that when I'm using the knife, I don't end up putting score marks in the base wood that I've got here. So let's just go ahead and separate some of these. This is a nice sharp knife, and that does make a lot of difference. If you're struggling, it's probably more so than anything because your blade is blunt. So, and they do go blunt. You think, well, I'm only using it on plastic. Why is it going blunt? Well, they do. Because they do wear, they do distort over time. These pieces are actually really easy to separate, and just be a bit careful that you don't dig into the actual piece that you're trying to separate. What you will find is that sometimes you can see there's some little burrs, and you can use a file if you want to be really careful, or you can be ham-fisted like I am and just use the knife there to separate them out. So we've got the first two pieces. And it's quite nice actually. There's not too many pieces for this kit. I think the most we're going to be putting together are the steps for the side here. And these precast concrete, I guess these would have been on the original. So very reminiscent of the old Hornby 00 footbridge, if you remember that kind of southern railway precast concrete. I guess they pioneered that a lot, and certainly Ratio do some really nice fencing that would complement this box very, very well. I've used that an awful lot. It's quite easy to use, and I've had some really great effects with that on not just Weir Yard, but also a number of other layouts. It's probably my favourite fencing that Ratio do for its versatility. So we've got all of the walls sorted out there, and we're going to go straight into the build. Now we've got those instructions there. Now if you need to, you can. There are many different tools that you can use to kind of make sure that all these pieces fit together. I'm just looking there, there's some burr marks there. It doesn't show them on the picture, so I'm guessing these have come off a master sprue that it's either broken off that other sprue, or more likely it's come off like a sprue that has many of these, and they just put what's needed in each box. So that is, according to this, that is our floor level. So let's just have a look, and it's always worth doing a kind of dry run, working out. That's going to go, if we look on the box, that's going to be this bit here. So let's put that to one side, and this is, let's just work this out. So that's the front, we can see there. That's going to be the back, so we can see on those instructions there. So it's going to be that way around. Right, so I was just getting it clear in my head. Right, so, and that's going to be there. So I think what we need to be thinking about is this way around. So that's going to go in there, and I can feel it hooks in. I think we're going to have to get the end wall in there. So just dry run with some of these parts, and don't be frightened of just test fitting parts. And so I'm going to start with these two, and what I'm going to be using is the Humbrol liquid poly. It's not the be-all and end-all in the world of plastic glues. You can also get the polystyrene cement. There's a whole host of different glues, but this is the one which I tend to prefer. It's just fairly easy to use. It smells like pear drops. Use it in a well-ventilated room. Otherwise, you might get a bit too happy. It'll also give you a headache. So I'm just going to line up those two. Make sure that we don't have any seams poking out. And it does bond fairly quickly. But by the same token, it gives you some adjustment time. So this is the floor. Want to get this in actually, and make sure that this will draw everything square. And you can see there, that's going to fit on there. And actually, just turn that over. I just want to run a little bit of a seam on there, just to make sure that all of the join is coated. And again, we could just check that edge down there. That seems fine. So, next piece I'm going to do, we've got the lower door. I'm just checking on there. That looks all right. So I'm going to turn this over onto its side. And again, test fitting that in. It does feel like it's twisted slightly. And sometimes you might find some of these bits do get a little bit twisted either in transit or also when they come off the moulds they can distort slightly. It's not a big issue because it'll all get pulled into line. Get that into place. I'm going to hold that, and it is trying to just pull that apart, but it will grab in just one moment. So this is coming together quite nicely, and let's see now. I think actually we should get the side wall on, just checking again on the paperwork. And this is a really nice kit actually. It goes together so far really easily, and I like kits that reward the builder, and also ones that work for every skill level. And it's my opinion so far, what I've experienced with this kit, is this is really good for all skill levels. So if you're new to kit building, maybe thinking, oh, I'm not sure about building kits, if you're really new to it, this kit feels like one which is really good for somebody who you know, maybe just wants to see whether kit building's for them, and you get a good result without needing a huge amount of skill. And it does feel a very robust kit as well. Very quickly builds up into something that has real solid bulk to it. Feels very strong. Certainly once we've got the glue set, I think this is going to be a really, really robust kit. So we'll just... So no real skill needed in this. I like this. Because I do think that, you know, there's no point in making all kits really difficult to build and needing high skill levels. People have got to start out somewhere. And this is actually working out really nicely. I do like that. So we've got the basic body of the kit built up. And what we're going to need now is, see, that's going to go down there, but there is a door underneath. And what I think is actually, at this stage, I'm going to start some of the painting. And the reason for this is that otherwise it's going to be a little bit difficult. it's interesting, when we look at the kit on the box, we've got this kind of buff sand colour for the concrete around the window surrounds. The windows themselves picked out in a green. I suspect though that the windows we can do in different colours. Now these might have been more prevalent on the southern railway, closer to the south coast, more likely to be subjected to bombing, but I guess in other areas of the country these that would have been painted slightly differently. And also, of course, a lot of these lasted through into BR days, and there's probably still one or two knocking about out there, either used or disused. So it's perfectly acceptable, I guess, to be able to have this painted up in other colours. So I'm going to do this to match the signal cabin that I built, the Highland Railway one, which was another Pico product, which was the laser cut wood kit, and I'm going to go with that blue colour. So these are the colours that I have chosen to investigate for this, and what I'm going to show you, under the bright light actually, some of these don't quite look the same colour that they actually are. Now, that's the blue that I used on the Highland Railway signal box, matte number 109 from the Humbrol enamel range. It's a really good colour. Drying matte, I always think benefits a model. So that's going to be for the windows and the doors. So just put that to one side. And then for the concrete, I was looking across these. Some of these actually look too yellow. So we're going to get rid of number 81. And then we've got a choice from matte 103 or matte 74. And I'm actually going towards the matte 103. Again, both of these are Humbrol enamels, both matte. But I'm going to go with the lighter colour, I think. So put that one back. And then I've also got matte number 96, which I believe from memory, this is RAF blue. But you see we've got the blue engineers brick courses. I'm thinking that I might have a go at replicating that with this. Now that might be a little bit tricky, but we're going to have a go and see where we get to. I suspect that these two bands of brick here might be really difficult to do, and this is where you can kind of customize your kit a little bit. Once it's weathered up, it might not be quite so obvious. I'm going to do the definitely do the engineer's bricks at the bottom, but maybe these two lines here, if you're not confident with your painting skills, then maybe miss those out, just to make sure you don't get wavy lines. Right, so we're going to go ahead now and get the model painted so that once that paint dries, we can get the windows in the back, and they're important to do after the painting of the window frames. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how careful you are, you will get paint go through onto the glass and make a hash of it. So this is the best way to do it. We're going to get the doors painted up as well, everything else that we need to. The drain pipes as well, I think we're going to do them as well in the blue colour. That makes sense. So it's basically fixtures and fittings in the blue. When it comes to painting, essentially you need to make sure that your paints are well mixed up. And with this, I'm thinking that first stage would be to get all of that buff colour in and then let it dry. Should we do that, or should we go for the windows first? Actually, let's go with the windows. We'll do all of the accoutrements in the blue, let that dry, and then we shall do the buff colour. So let's move those out of the way. We can also then do the bottom courses of engineer's bricks as well if we're feeling flush to do that whilst the rest of the paint is still a bit wet. But these need a good shake, because they do separate out and you can hear that sloshing around. Brushes are very important as well, so I'm going to pick, let's see now, is that a bit on the big side? I think it is actually. Let's go to a slightly smaller brush. Yeah, let's try it with this one. So I'm going to get in there and make sure that this is well mixed up. Bit of sediment on the bottom, as you can see there. Always make sure that your paints are well mixed, otherwise you run the risk of you use up all of the more liquid part of it too quickly, you don't get good coverage, and then ultimately you end up with a tin of paint that goes too thick, and it's like you're rendering the kit in the particular colour, and you honestly don't want that. Because the brush is fairly heavily loaded, let's do the doors first, and you can see get good coverage there. So we're going to do doors and door frames. Got to be quite careful here, because what I don't want is to make a hash of it and let the blue paint soak off into the brickwork, which you can see I've kind of managed a little bit of that at the top. Now I shake ever so slightly, I always have done. It's not a medical condition, it's just the way I am. But I'm starting on that door because that gives us a really good trial run, in all honesty. You're not really going to see that door, so that's fine. Actually, this is going in quite nicely. It's easier, I find, to paint on the sprue and then to touch up afterwards, because what you find is that otherwise it's very difficult to get a good edge on some of this. I've finally done all of the painting that I'm going to do. I've decided not to do the band of engineer's bricks at the bottom. The reason for this is I don't have confidence in my painting skills. I just don't have a steady enough hand to do it. Now, I've been let down a little bit by the Humbrol Paint on this particular colour, number 103, and it looks to be that this is a tin from the time when there was a few quality control issues with the Humbrol paints, and as you can see, it's just really struggled to kind of get a good coverage. It's gone very patchy. The same has happened when I've painted these on the sprue. These will get another coat once they're in situ, just to touch them up, but as you can see, it does look a bit washed out. You can see the plastic colour coming through. It's really, really difficult. And one thing that I would say, which I think might have improved this kit a little bit for the finish, would have been to make the window frames part of a separate sprue that are then glued in from behind. That way you can get a much cleaner edge with the painting. So that's one little aspect I think possibly would have been a better way to design the kit. That said, it's come together pretty well. I'm now going to let this dry, and then what I'm going to do is touch up anything that needs touching up, and I'm also going to do the Mortar Course. Now, we talked about this before. I use acrylic off-white paint, and you thin it down to the texture of kind of milk, and it just by capillary action fills in all of the brick courses, the actual mortar courses, I should say, between the bricks. Then a quick wipe over takes anything off the surface, and then you get a good representation of mortar. And hopefully then in the weathering stage, I'm going to hope to just disguise the fact that this off yellow colour has not really given us the coverage that I would have hoped and expected. I'm just going to cut out some of the clear plastic that's part of the box that the kit came in, and you don't need to be super neat on these pieces. It's just simply a case of cutting strips, and then what I want to do is, it doesn't really need much to get these to stay in place, but I don't want to kind of let this leach out and make a mess of the paint. Remarkably reluctant there, but I've got that in. I'm going to just a little bit in around there, and the next section I'll put down and into there. I'm just going to build up like that. It's a good way of using up this clear plastic that the packaging comes in. It is actually recommended in the instructions that you make use of this, and I suppose it's only going to end up in landfill otherwise, so it makes sense to use it. And that's just a little bit on the big side there, so just going to trim that down. Like I said before, these don't have to be absolutely perfect, and glazing actually is quite easy. Now, you could fit a signal box interior into this, but in all honesty, I think that because of the nature of the small windows, the thick walls, it's something that I'm not going to do. I don't think it detracts from the kit, although there are signal box interior kits which you can use to kind of build that up in there. But as I said, I'm not going to bother with that. Now I've got the windows in place, what I'm going to do is test fit. Let's just go back to those instructions. You can see there it tells you about using the clear plastic glazing to do the window apertures. It's kit number 553 is the interior detailing. I'm going to just miss out the banisters and the stairway for now. I can put them in later, and I'm just going to move straight on to doing the roof with the chimney. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back, and all of this staircase is going to go in once the paint is set and hardened off. Otherwise, the problem that you'll get is that the glue will make a mess of the paint, and just don't go there. Really don't go there, because it will ruin your model. Certainly ruin the finish of your model if you're not careful. Now, with this roof, I'm going to run the glue around, just see there, around on the inside. And hopefully that will then allow this to just place onto here, and you'll feel it go into the right position, and hopefully it's not quite sticking. I think there's ever so slight distortion on some of these plastic pieces. I'm just going to apply a little bit of firm force, such as this, just until the glue is taken. It doesn't seem to want to, though, does it? There. And that is why, because it was in the wrong place. And that's sometimes why a test fit can be quite useful. So we're just putting a bit of pressure, and now I'm going to put all this to one side, and we can come back to this tomorrow when everything has set. If you want to, you can add a coat of paint to the roof, and that's something that may also improve its appearance. I would recommend something like Humbrol Matte number 27. I guess I might just put a coat of that on now. I painted up the roof and some of the walkways, and I used matte 32, and this is actually a really good colour. It's gone on well. You can see there, Humbrol enamel, so that's the same design of tin, which means the same period, and it just shows that the quality back then was very variable of these paints. What I actually really wanted to do at the moment was do the mortar courses, so what I'm thinking I'm going to do is I'm going to do the mortar, and then I'm going to go back and possibly give it a second coat afterwards to all of these concrete beams, and see where I get to. For this stage, I've talked about this before, what I actually use is, it's an acrylic paint. So we've got acrylic artist colour Liquitex concentrated. I've chosen unbleached titanium. I've had this actually for probably about 15 years. And it goes a long way when you use it like this. It's actually exactly the same colour I used in a more neat form to paint up the Highland Railway signal box, the laser cut wooden kit that I reviewed from Pico. First time I've actually ever used it as paint rather than as a watered down wash, and that actually worked quite well. But what I've done is you add water into the concentrate until you get what is pretty much milk. Don't drink it, obviously it isn't real milk, but that then should allow us to do the mortar courses. Now, a part of me is thinking, should I have given this a good wash? Normally it's considered good practice to wash this, and the reason for that is because there's a releasing agent used in the moulds which is hydrophobic. But actually this seems to be working, so let's cut the corners, and I'm just gonna put this on, scrub with the paintbrush, and then we'll see where we get to with this. So I'm going to go to the time lapse and you'll be able to see the progress, but you can already see that those mortar courses are really brought to life. At the moment it looks a little bit messy in places, but now the thing to do is leave that to start to dry. You don't want it to go completely dry, but we're going to leave that to start to dry, and then we can rub off where it's gone over the bricks. But you can already see it really does start to pick out some of that detail. So I'm going to put that to one side, and I'm going to turn now to the stairs. Again, you can see it's very disappointing on that Humbrol paint, it has to be said, but we're going to make the best of this, and we can always go back over it again. So we can see here the pieces that we need. So we build the inner edge and the top of the balcony first. Once they're in, we move straight on to doing the outer edge of the stairs. So pretty easy. So that's one of the pieces that we need. I'm just going to orientate that to kind of help me to work out which bit I'm wanting for where. I'm going to go again to the time lapse, and let's get this built up. So I've done the stairs. This is probably the most challenging part of the whole build, in all honesty, just to get all those treads in. I've got them in, as you saw in the time lapse, using a pair of tweezers, really careful getting them in. In the meantime, the mortar course has actually kind of disappeared in the drying process, so not to worry. I've still got the mix that I made up. I actually made far too much, so I'm going to give it another coat and then leave that to dry. So just get that all in there. I just want it to go kind of tacky, I guess. And then once the mortar courses are done, there's a lot of touching up to do with that concretey colour. As you can see over here, there's a lot of edges that need to be done. You can see just how much of a difference having mortar courses picked out actually makes to a model. And when you see a model on somebody's layout and you think, God, they've made that look amazing, it's usually little things just like this that are what is making that difference. Once you know how to do it, then you can make a huge difference on your models as well. So the next step, we've got to go back with that matte number 103 from Humbrol. It's a bit saturated there in the light. It's a bit of a disappointing tin, this. I'm giving it a really good shake, just trying to make sure it's really well mixed. But in all honesty, we're not getting great coverage out of this. But of course, this also, there's a few touch-ups needed around the actual stairs as well. So that's something else that we're going to be doing. Hopefully, the second coat will make the difference. But yeah, there's some very disappointing quality control issues from some of these tins from a number of years ago. I think I've got one of those slightly dodgy tins. Just got to paint in some of this. So I'm going to go for the time lapse, and we'll come back and see if we've got this sorted. Paint's still a little bit wet, but you can see there the brickwork's come out reasonably well, and second coat of that yellow, the matte yellow, has just kind of finished off that concrete, the lintels, the staircase, and it's all come together quite nicely. Once that's set, I'm going to give it overnight just to make sure it's hardened right off. I'm going to move on to weathering wash. But first up, I can now use some pencils just to mute down some of this cream. So I'm going to move on to that. These are what I like to use for the next step of weathering the brickwork. These are the Derwent signature watercolor pencils, and these are really great for this job. I've got 3 colours here that I tend to use. Red oxide, which you can see on the end there, it looks more brown to me, to be honest. And then I've got 2 shades of green, Prussian green hue and sap green phthalo, it says there. Not entirely sure what that means, but I'm sure somebody there in the comments will let me know. But essentially we've got a dark green and a lighter, more olive green, plus that red oxide. That's going to give us the different shades going on this brickwork. So the concrete coloured paint is still a bit wet, so we've got to be a bit careful with this. And with this, what I do is just scrub over the top, trying to pick out a few different individual places. And because these are watercolour pencils, you can then use a bit of water just to blend them in. The trick is not to press on too hard. Just let the actual texture of the brickwork take some of the watercolour pencil off. And this is just a suggestion of algae, all manner of stuff that just gets onto these bricks. Change of colour. And once I've got this basic stuff on, I'm going to use a little bit of water and my finger, possibly a brush. Actually, no, I think I'll try using my finger just to smudge it all together. So, just lick my finger and just rub over the top, blending it all in. And this just gets rid of any of the pencil marks. Blending it all in. Some of this in. And it just dirties down some of this brickwork, like so. And there we are, a nice little bit of light weathering using the watercolour pencils. Just going to leave this all to dry now, and then final weathering in situ beckons, and that's it. That's all I really need. This is the area that I've chosen to put the signal box. You can see that it's a little bit, I just kind of got filled up at the time with whatever was available. And really it's a little bit of a disappointing area. These kind of wire trees don't really pass muster anymore. So what I've thought actually is that this is a great location to somehow fit in the signal box. So you can see there that it's going to fit all right in that space. So what I'm going to do is take out some of these trees, and I'm going to prepare this area for the signal box. I'm going to leave a little bit of space as well, because ultimately I want to add some bits and pieces to the signal box in the same way that I did when I reviewed the Highland Railway signal box, and then I made that place of honour at the top of the hump marshalling yard. So here you can see we've got all of the paraphernalia, and it really comes together to make a lovely little scene, and I want to get a sense of that in the new location as well. And this is the final placing, and just waiting for glue to dry. One of the things I did do is on the flat roof I've put some moss, and that's held in place with some very, very thin down dirty paint to give a really weathered look to that roof. I guess it would have built up moss over time. It's the scourge of flat roofs everywhere. Anybody who's got a flat roof will know exactly what I mean with that. I've also put in a few flowers, you can see the violet there, and just generally bedded it into the landscape. So once the glue dries, a lot of that will, the white of that area will die away, and it should just blend in and look like it's been there forever and a day. I've also got the signalman sat on a chair on the veranda there on the end, presumably waiting for the next train, just taking a little bit of a breather. But overall, this is a beautiful kit, and I'm really pleased to have been given the opportunity by Pico to road test this kit. I give it the full thumbs up, can really recommend this. And we've got some affiliate links down below in the description box for you to be able to find your own version of this kit, but also the signal box interior detailing kit if that's a route you want to go. We did review the O-gauge version of that a little while ago, but they do it in 00, and it's an ideal companion to a kit such as this. Well, I hope you found that video was useful and enjoyed watching me put together that kit. And a big, big thank you goes out to Pico for sending that over to the channel for review. Don't forget to tickle that like button, share this video too, and subscribe to the channel if you've not already done so. And remember that you can join us every Monday evening at 7 o'clock UK time for the Jenny Monday Club, where you can hang out with like-minded railway enthusiasts and chat about all things model rail related, as well as catching up on news and views of products that are coming to the market, and get your daily dose of model rail fun. But until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying you take really good care of yourself, and in association with Rails of Sheffield and their wanted second-hand buying service, it couldn't be quicker and easier to get the best prices for your unwanted model railway rolling stock and locomotives. And remember to tell them until the end of June 2020 that Jenny Kirk sent you, and you'll get a 10% uplift on your agreed valuation. But until next time, this is me saying you take care of yourself. Bye for now. Today's video is sponsored by Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders designed to be fully compatible with every manufacturer's locomotive. Visit train-o-matic.com to browse the full range and see what they've got suitable for you. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon. And an extra special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Michael Churchwood, Anthony Hunt, William Wade, Wayne Johns, Offshore Allen, oorail.co.uk, Tepic, Michael Lockie, Helen Sink, Peter Bolton, Brian Smith, Brian and Dorothy Mudd, Judge Mortis, Gary Lewis, and David Quinn. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.